until it gives me live, but looks like we are live. Welcome, welcome, everyone. Uh, this is the celebration of Eid. We are in the 10th year, or we are starting to be in the 10th year of completion of Ethereum. This we are going to now create 10 weeks of Ethereum content. Like personally, Ethereum has given me quite a bit. I've been very fortunate. I've been ETH. ETH was my introduction to crypto back in 2016, 17, and I've been very fortunate with it. And when I realized this is the 10th anniversary, I randomly made a post on Warpcast. I got Jason's support on that post, and I'm like, Jason, what if I do this? And he's like, dude, do it. You should do it. And then I randomly message Josh as well, and he's like, yep, you should do it. We are planning to do something officially, but if community does something, we'll support it. And Mark was the first one to just raise his hands up and say, if you need help, I'm here. So this is all volunteer run. We are trying to do something fun. It's gonna be a hectic 50 days actually. So 10 weeks of Ethereum content every day of the weekdays. For that, we have amazing first kickoff guest. We have Josh Stark, who heads community, and we have Jason Chaskin, who is a researcher at Ethereum. How are you doing, guys?
I'm doing great.
Doing great. Doing great. Happy to be here. Excited to talk about Ethereum as always.
Amazing, amazing. I wanted to know to start with, like, how did your love story start with Ethereum? Like, I'm gonna jump in right in. If I would, you're okay to introduce your introduction in the middle of it, but I wanted to start your origin story and say, how did you come to know about it? How did the relationship started? And was it a love at first sight, or was it more like get to know each other, go for a coffee, and then go from there? So because I know Jason more, I'm gonna like put Jason first on the spot, and then Josh, you can take over.
My introduction to Ethereum certainly was not love at first sight. It was back in the ICO era. So this is 2017, 2018. And I was a senior in college, I believe. And at the time, I heard about it just because everybody was making so much money. There would be a new token every day, and everybody was buying the new ICO token. I didn't even fully understand the concept of like using the chain. It was just signing up for random exchange and trying to buy token because one of my friends told me it was going to go up. And I was a college student. And I didn't even have that much money. I was just like playing around for fun. And at the time, I was a finance major, and my like hero at the time was Warren Buffett, and he said all crypto was rat poison. So I didn't really take it too seriously. I went off
Hmm.
and graduated and became a banker, and never really thought about it again up until the next bull run when the U.S. Fed, I think, started printing all the money due to the COVID pandemic and the markets needing to be shut down. And I had one friend who, despite the bear market in between the previous bull markets, never stopped posting about Bitcoin and immutable money. And he was the one that like kind of made me never forget it. And when the printing started from the Fed, I'm like, maybe Ray was really onto something here. And then that led me down the rabbit hole to Ethereum. And during my job, I started listening to the old Bankless podcast. Like I started with episode one and just kept going. And then it's been, I guess, a love affair with Ethereum ever since.
Wow. Okay. So we always have that hype man in the middle, right? Like we need to probably get that hype man on the podcast, but that totally makes sense. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I'll definitely date myself here, but so a very long time ago, I went to law school and worked as a lawyer for a year, and didn't love what I was doing in that year, and quit that job and was trying to figure out what would come next. And while I had the opportunity to be unemployed for a little while and just kind of follow some interests, I finally had the time to learn about crypto, which at this time was really just Bitcoin and the idea of Ethereum. And yeah, just really fell down the rabbit hole. Bitcoin I had heard of, but it didn't really click for me at the time. Not coming from a background of caring at that time a lot about sound money or these kinds of ideas. It seemed like something for someone else. But once I heard of Ethereum, it just made sense immediately. Like, of course, we can do complex relationships and provide some of the benefits of law and these systems through code. And being able to do that globally at scale just seemed so obviously a very important thing. And so, had that moment that many of us do of just becoming immediately obsessed with this and, concerning our friends and family with the sudden passion for a very strange corner of the internet, and haven't looked back. And I've done, many things over the years in the Ethereum ecosystem.
And speaking of the strange corners of the internet and Bitcoin, today is Bitcoin Pizza Day, so I think it's a dual celebration. So
Happy Pizza Day.
happy Pizza Day to all who observe.
I will be celebrating at
absolutely.
the global pizza party that Pizza DAO is putting on tonight. So excited for that.
Amazing. Likewise, I'm helping with the Toronto Pizza party as well. So all welcome. Please join in. It's a big tent, and we welcome all cryptonauts of all stripes. Please join in.
No, that's actually a good call out. Like I told my wife about the story of like the pizza and like 10,000 Bitcoin, and she's like, "Whoa, don't they guy like how does that guy go to sleep at night? Like that's too much money." And I'm like, that dude doesn't care because I'm pretty sure he has like equal amount, if not more, stashed somewhere else in his other wallet. So it's a funny part. But Marv, you didn't get chance to introduction. You want to probably do that a little bit, and then probably like ask the next question, and then we'll just like make it more neutral.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Marv. I'm a Web3 marketer, podcaster. I have a podcast on the new internet. And I think Ethereum fits so closely within what we believe the new internet could be when it comes to understanding. Some people describe Web3 as Web2 socials with money. And Ethereum is such a key driver of all this. So, Jason, I see you nodding there. Do you have any thoughts on this economy that we're putting in place and what Ethereum means for the big picture of content and creation?
That's a great question. And it means so much. I think one thing that I think about here is if you were to kind of like redesign the internet from scratch, knowing everything that like we know, or even get rid of everything that we know, just like think about how to best design like interactions on the internet, you would design it in a way where something like Ethereum is involved in the middle, and you would want like ownership. You would want direct ways to pay people. You would want like not walled gardens. And unfortunately, we didn't have these tools back when like the internet was coming up, prior to even things like Facebook and Instagram and all the platforms that we know and love slash maybe not love today. But now we do have these tools, and I think it's like extremely powerful that we're attempting to rebuild it in a way that like creators can directly make money, or like we could avoid the walled gardens that exist in like the platforms I was previously talking about, and like directly like interact with your fans. I actually like somewhat went down the rabbit hole today because I met for the first time a people pleaser, and she was telling me about what she did, where she raised money for her the anime film, and then in the film, if you donated and you were a top donor, you were included in the credits, and she was able to fund it just from like people around the world. And then you can do like crazy cool things that just like isn't even possible. Like they actually included a seed phrase in the film, but like didn't actually reveal what it was. So there was just like a word on a door, and then there was chickens in the film. And then if you were able to solve the puzzle, you got like a rare NFT. And we could just like make these all new like cool experiences, and like beyond cool experience, just like be able to own your following and like directly contribute to your fans. And it kind of will bring us back to the days when like the web used to be fun and owned by the people. And now it's like if you're not following Mark Zuckerberg's rules, you're thrown off the platform. And like whether you like Mark Zuckerberg or not, like one person shouldn't be in charge of all like the photo sharing platform for the world. And like using Ethereum, which is like a neutral settlement layer where like you can actually like own your followers and you can own your content. We can create an internet that like really belongs to the people, which if you think about it from first principles is like how we would design it now. So I think I'm like really inspired by everything we're doing here. And like, I feel very blessed that my job also aligns with like my passion. And like, I really think we have the potential to make the world better, but like we need to work hard because it's definitely not guaranteed.
That completely makes sense. By the way, I just want to welcome roughly 100 people who just started watching us in the starting. So welcome everyone one more time. I just want to say this: we are celebrating the 10th anniversary of Ethereum. The goal here is to highlight every builder that has made Ethereum fun, unique, and usable, scalable. All the adjectives that make it special. So welcome. There's gonna be a 10-week long marathon, 1 p.m. EST. And we have two amazing guests, Josh and Jason. They both are from Ethereum Foundation themselves, and sharing their story on how they joined. So, Jason, thanks for that answer. I'm just going to throw the ball to Josh and then try to understand you like how did you made your first move towards Ethereum as a builder or as a community manager? Who approached first? And I know I'm sounding like more like a relationship, but Ethereum for me has been like more like a relationship in the context where, like, if I think about anything else, I have to think like I'm cheating for a while, right? So, like, how did you think about it? And when was your commitment moment saying that, I'm going all in on Ethereum? When you join as an employee, you make that commitment, roughly speaking. So tell me more.
Right. I mean, I guess I've always seen it more of that Ethereum is a community that I've been part of for 10 years and, is like a very big part of my life. I think as of maybe this year, I'll have worked, like I worked for many years in the Ethereum ecosystem before I had anything to do with the EF. So, back in 2015, I ran a small consulting company in Toronto doing various kind of we would do proofs of concepts for startups and we would go into banks and explain the blockchain to them and, do various things like this. I ran a Bitcoin and Ethereum meetup for a couple of years. I also was the person responsible for a Bitcoin ATM. It was definitely the most used Bitcoin ATM in Toronto in
You
2015.
built that. That's amazing.
So it was. I didn't build it, but we owned one and kind of managed it. And it was a great education of just, I would spend my mornings just doing tech support for people that, wanted to buy Bitcoin but knew nothing about it and explaining to them, what a seed phrase was, how to install this wallet, why you need to stand there for 12 minutes to wait for a next block to get a confirmation. And that if you really want to be secure, you need to wait for 6 confirmations. And so people would stand around for an hour, not a great user experience. Later, went on to
one single slot finality.
Yeah, someday. The next big thing I did, I guess, was ETH Global. So in 2017, Kartik Talwar and Liam Horan and myself founded ETH Global. That began with a big hackathon at Waterloo here near Toronto, and became a global phenomenon that still exists today. Did that for a couple of years, and around the same time, also had a company called L4 that was doing some very early layer 2 scaling. So if you're as old as me, you remember that before rollups, there was Plasma, and before Plasma, there were state channels. And so we worked on taking a lot of the early theory around state channels and turning it into a series of libraries and frameworks that developers could actually use to scale their applications. So did many things before working with the EF. The first EF thing I did was I started to meet more people at the foundation, and they asked me to come on and reboot the Ethereum.org website, which was a pretty kind of static page for a long time. And so I was lucky to work on that and hire the initial team and set the initial direction and see it grow into something that I think is now really like a world-class resource for Ethereum. And that led into many other projects and eventually joining the EF full-time at the end of 2020.
Wow, that's good. I didn't know that you did this work. And like, I think you don't talk much about yourself. So this podcast is the perfect way. I would love to get other people to know about this, because everything that you mentioned, I've known of those items, but I didn't know you were behind it, especially ETH Global and L4. Being in Toronto, I've heard of like pretty much everything that you mentioned, but did not know you were involved. So thank you so much for doing all the work.
Credit to many other people who've been behind all these things too, but happy to play my part.
Amazing. One more announcement. We have one person from ETH Global committed to come on the shows in the next couple of weeks as soon as that ETH Prague is complete. So it's going to be fun.
I have a quick thing to say about ETH Global there. I think that's when I really knew the Ethereum community was for me. So For more context there, I actually quit my job. I was doing investment banking and I decided I wanted to work full time in Ethereum, but I didn't really know anybody in tech. So I thought you had to like be a software engineer in order to work in like a tech space. And so I was learning how to code. And after about 6 to 8 months, maybe, I went to ETH Global New York 2022. And this is in the depths of the bear market. And I had never seen an environment like ETH Global. There was hundreds of people just coding all night. And like I was still a beginner to software engineering, and like everybody was so nice and supportive of me, even though like I couldn't get a basic NFT ticket app to work. And after that experience, I knew for like 100% fact this was a community for me. Like there were people that were just so passionate, they were willing to spend their whole weekend working on something that like at the time most people thought like was never coming back. And yeah, I've never looked back.
No, you're so spot on, right? Like I think Ethereum has a lot of DNA from Canadian mindset as well, because Canadians are in very similar way, and I'm tooting our own horn in this case, but like we like building, we like again equality and the start those values, and I think I've seen that again and again. Whenever A or B, it always goes the way the Canadian way in the whenever the Ethereum decisions are made. So. Thanks for Justin for recognizing that.
I'm sorry about the Maple Leafs.
That happens. I don't think people back it anymore. But oops, that's
Yeah.
life. Uh,
It's not anything we're not used to, I guess. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So I wanna dig deep into one of like a little bit of your roles, personally speaking, and I want to get the complexity out of your role, how difficult it is to work for a foundation versus working for another enterprise, another startup, another financial institution. Like, and I want to understand that from the perspective of like, look, you guys are doing amazing work, but you still get criticized for it, and still you keep doing. How do you do it? So maybe Josh, if you can start from your side, as in like, hey, how is this work? What is your work or day to day, if you can share a little bit, and then how is it different from other positions you have held, and how did you adjust into it? Maybe a couple of examples with couple of projects would be very advantageous for people to listen.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm part of the management team, and that tends to mean that I cover a lot of responsibilities. I'd say the two of my top focuses right now are building up the EF's kind of communications functions, and that's a big bucket that you might, you could put social into that, and you could put marketing into that, and you could put, more like organizational comms into that. And so, we're actively working on this. We've recently hired someone from social who'll be starting in a few weeks, and are scoping out, the next hires to keep building that function. So figuring out what is the right way for the EF to do that is something I'm working on. Another big project is the $1 trillion security initiative that we announced last week. That is essentially an effort to first understand the status of Ethereum's strengths and areas for improvement when it comes to security, ranging from the user experience and making it easy for someone's grandmother to use the chain, all the way to more esoteric issues like consensus security and dependencies on Web 2 infra. So that's another big focus of mine right now. In addition to that, there's always just there's a lot going on, right? There are teams within the EF that might be trying to change or figure out their own priorities, and I will often get involved in those conversations. There's often hiring for different roles within the EF that I might be responsible for or involved in. There's often external relationships we have that I tend to be a touch point for or involved in that. Strategic discussions about where our priorities should be that I'm involved in. So there's always a lot going on. I've often joked that like my job has often been that if it's not someone else's problem, it becomes my problem until I figure out whose problem it should be. And we're blessed in Ethereum to always have lots of problems
Love it.
because we have a lot to do. In terms of what's hard about the job or working at the EF, I mean, there's a lot of things. I think one basic thing is just that no one's ever done this before, right? This isn't a situation where it's easy to say that you can just follow a playbook that someone else laid out for you. There are many novel questions that come across the Ethereum Foundation's desk first, and that we need to think about from first principles. Sometimes there are playbooks you can use, of course. We don't need to reinvent the wheel and everything, but oftentimes there are important differences with respect to, for example, how a tech company in the mid 2000s might have behaved, and how the EF should behave. So there's always a lot of just challenging things to think about where there aren't clear answers. So it's kind of a meta answer to your question, but maybe I'll leave it there and see what Jason says first, and we can come back to other things.
That totally makes sense. But please take over, Jason.
Yeah, of course. So my role has been changing. It started off as working very closely with, and I still do actually work very closely with Josh and other members of the leadership team. If they have various different like research projects they wanted me to do or want me to do, I try to help them with that. Obviously, being a like leadership team member, they have very important decisions that they need to make, and so I try to make sure they have all the context and research needed to make those decisions. More recently, I now lead a new team that's called the Ecosystem Intelligence Team. And I think it's a very exciting time to kind of work on the ecosystem side of the Ethereum Foundation, because we're kind of going through a lot of changes there, and it's being built out on what its functions do. And part of this team, its goal is to make sure that the EF itself is like best connected to the broader ecosystem and on top of and aware of trends. So a lot of my time is just making sure I'm knowledgeable about everything that's going on in Ethereum and aware of like metrics and tracking like new metrics. And that's what my team is going to be even more focused on going forward, making sure that we're like on top of key metrics and that the decisions that are being made in the Ethereum at the EF are like leading towards actual trackable metrics that we want to succeed. Another exciting thing that I've been working on is there's actually been an app layer research fellowship, and there are 5 different fellows, and they've been diving deep into use cases that maybe haven't gotten enough like attention or love that other use cases have, that like we've seen succeed. Because now we're at the point where kind of everything that was laid out in Vitalik's original white paper has come to life, but we really do think Ethereum will be so much more. And so these fellows are looking into some of those use cases, and we'll see what comes out of that. Like I'm really interested to see like the blockers and enablers that they're going to find. And yeah, working at the EF is like extremely unique too, because we, as an organization, like a Web2 organization, you want to like win, and you want to like win everything. And like we still want like Ethereum to win, but we don't necessarily want the EF to be controlling everything, because then at that point, like, are you really anything different than like a Web2 company? And then what's the point of everything we're doing here? So it's like very interesting to see the strategic thinking that goes on, that like decisions like people like Josh have to make of how can we make sure that like Ethereum is being used in the world, but the EF isn't controlling. And so I'm like it's a very unique job, and like it's constantly changing because the environment is constantly changing as well.
That's very interesting. Mark, by the way, if you have questions, please feel free to jump in.
Mhm.
I just want to double click on this one, where when you said you're basically figuring out the KPI infrastructure for figuring out the growth and the ecosystem. Are there any new KPIs that you have recently introduced or started measuring that will help you make decisions, and you as in like you and the Josh and all the other management team members, as well as something that ecosystem should be mindful of, that hey, this is what the team and everything is focused towards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. And we're still on the stage where we're mapping all these things out. But like one area that's emerging that we're definitely tracking, and we want to make sure that we're like winning and continue to win, is like the stablecoin market. We've seen just the positive impact that stablecoins have had from people around the world. I'm sure all you guys know of a story of like somebody sending remittances to a family member, or like a big company saving costs by switching to stablecoins. And there's a reason why over 50% of all issued stablecoins live on Ethereum. It's because if you are going to like be transferring money like this, you want to make sure it's on the most secure, credibly neutral, never going down
Mm.
settlement layer. And so that's a metric that we're keeping track of, and want to make sure we win and we continue to win. And there's even like, if you look at the usage, there's like cryptocurrencies like Tron, which have like had a lot of success previously. But we're at the stage now where if you're actually transacting on Ethereum, it's cheaper and you're getting better security. And so we want to like keep eating away at market share there.
That's actually very well said because again, I completely agree that Ethereum has been leading, but recently people like other L1s have been trying to bite off the Ethereum market. Ethereum probably has to win back some of the market that it has lost, and especially the technology is there now. That was the reason why other L1s, in some cases L2s, were needed. And by the way, I'm in full support of L2s. I'm just saying that some security and transactions deserves to be on Ethereum L1. So I think that's a good way of putting it. Mark, take
And
over.
actually, speaking of the wide selection of L1s and L2, the L1, the L2s, and Ethereum, what role would the foundation have in helping all of these develop together? Like, what should the community and the other builders expect from the foundation, and what should the foundation expect from its builders? How do you see this relationship developing? Josh, you can get the ball rolling on that for us, please.
You're muted,
Oh,
Josh.
Thank you. One obvious thing there that you're probably aware of is interoperability. So, when we talk about the roadmap right now, the roadmap is basically three big things. It is scale L1, scale blobs for L2s so we can onboard billions of people to the ecosystem, and to improve UX. And one big piece of improving UX is interoperability, which to us means that using Ethereum and Ethereum's L2s and rollups, it feels like one cohesive product where I can easily send money if I have assets on Optimism mainnet. It's very easy for me to just use a certain address format and send money to someone that primarily uses Arbitrum. And so it should all just feel interoperable. And there's a lot of work going into this right now and being a lot of it coordinated by the Ethereum Foundation. So Josh Rudolph, another one of our Joshes, has been really working on this and helping lead calls and coordinating the wallet and L2 ecosystem around it. So one thing that I think that the ecosystem can expect from the EF is being more and more involved in these kind of coordination functions where it's difficult for everybody to get on the same page if there isn't someone to say, let's all come together, let's work through our differences, let's adopt some sort of common standards. So I think that's one big thing that we know is very important to achieving the roadmap, and that the EF is very involved in.
Another thing
do you
I could
think?
add there
Yes, please
is
go ahead,
one thing
Jason.
of course, one thing that I've been hosting that's been a really great opportunity to bring people across ecosystems together is app builder spaces on the Ethereum Foundation account, where there'll be like a central theme, whether it's like gaming or it's like the creator economy or finance, and we'll bring on teams from across the different ecosystems and just talk about what they're building and why it matters.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yep. I want to ask you a couple question about that actually. When you started that particular one, I think I reached out and said, hey, let's do this. This is very interesting because again, Ethereum Foundation, as you said earlier, it's community first. And when Ethereum Foundation wins, when the community does most of the legwork, but one the Ethereum Foundation has to make sure the steering the ship in the right direction. So I think like engine is the community, and you guys have the steering wheel, and you have to make sure that it goes in the right direction. So in that context, like how do you listen to the feedback? Like, is it the loudest noises generally surface the most, but they may not have the smartest voices. So how do you basically filter through the noise? How do you filter through good ideas and bad ideas? Is there a framework? Is there a decision process? How frequent it is? I know I put a lot of questions in one, but like if you can help us understand this decision, this particular idea came from the community and going live in this context. So that would help people see it end to end.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the context, but I can give you a bunch of examples. So, one easy one is, something that we published today was like a roundup of exciting news from the Ethereum ecosystem from the @Ethereum X account. And that was something that, we had heard many people wanted. That yes, there's many, roundups and newsletters out there, but obviously there's a lot of, visibility and signal that comes from that account. And so we should, take and summarize all the amazing things that the ecosystem is doing and broadcast them from this format. And so that's something that we've done and we're going to continue doing if the response continues to be good and it continues to be useful. So sometimes just sharing ideas, whether they are shared directly or on X or some other platform, we see them, we can act on them. Another example, a different direction, again, coming back to $1 trillion security, a huge piece of this project right now is getting input and feedback from the community. So, there's a form people can fill out and an email address they can reach out to, or reach out to myself directly or Frederick Svantes, who leads protocol security at the EF. We want people to tell us what concerns they have, what challenges they are seeing in their narrow piece of the Ethereum ecosystem, and that's what's going to make this whole operation a success. So in terms of like how we work with the community, almost anything that the EF does is going to have some element of community input. And I guess we try and always enable that in different ways. Some people, the right way to get feedback is, to see it on social, although that has its own problems, of course. Other times, we're scheduling one-on-one conversations or group conversations with people that know a lot about a subject. Other times, we're providing some sort of structure for people to engage in and give feedback on, like with $1 trillion security, or like with how anyone can submit a change to the ethereum.org website. And, a lot of it is built by the community. So I don't know, it's pretty pervasive into how we work and how the broader Ethereum ecosystem works. And there's so many different ways of, engaging with the broader community that you can just choose the right approach for what you're doing.
The one thing I'll add there that I always find fascinating, and especially if you're newer to the ecosystem, you might not know this, is there are all core devs calls that happen weekly, I believe. And on those calls, it's an open Zoom in which anybody can join. And an analogy that I use that I think really hits home is, imagine if like Apple's strategy calls were just an open Zoom in which anybody can join. And that's just like so unfathomable that like a community would be so open about what they do and like actually involve community input. But like anybody can join and potentially like change the direction of Ethereum. Josh might know the backstory to this better, but I think I heard from somewhere that actually Danny Ryan, his like intro to Ethereum was just, he thought the merge like work in Ethereum 2.0, which got rebranded, was just fascinating. And at the time he was just a web developer, and he started joining the calls and ended up being one of the more influential people in like shaping the direction of the merge. And so that could really be anybody around the world. And so I just think that's such a unique quality that Ethereum has, that there's really nothing else like it that I know of.
That's amazing. I think we need to get Danny on the call here as well. I think that work with Etherealize is pretty fantastic, especially what Josh mentioned earlier with $1 trillion security and focus on stable coins to get the market going. I think that's going to be super fun. I just want to reiterate what this like with podcast or celebration, whatever it is, because we have now almost 200 plus viewers. Uh, Ethereum is turning 10. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to celebrate the builders. We are trying to celebrate the shapers and everyone who has helped and whoever has been helped by Ethereum. So today we have Josh and Jason from the Ethereum Foundation sharing their story on how they joined Ethereum, and everyone. And anyone who's viewing, this is a 10-week long, every day or every weekday kind of discussions, topic, conversations. We still haven't figured out what we're going to call it other than the celebration. So if you have ideas, follow this particular one so you get notified when we go live tomorrow. Uh, for the next question, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah. Jason, I actually wanted to touch on what you mentioned with the permissionlessness of it all, right? People can just join in, they can just contribute. How is this being fostered from the community itself? Like, do we have forums that people can get in on? Like, are there bounties? How are we communicating this need, this open call for people to contribute to how Ethereum is today?
Yeah, great question. So there's a bunch of different forums that people can follow along with if you're interested in Ethereum. Like there's ETH Research, which is a very technical forum that people are posting the latest in Ethereum infrastructure research. And then there's also Ethereum Editions, which is a slightly less technical forum where you can just post about any topic from like things like standards, or it can go from more like high level, like how you're feeling about the current state of Ethereum. And There's also like Ethereum.org is a great resource to follow like everything with the latest that's going on in Ethereum. There's now the new social medias that people are using, like Farcaster, that I know me and Shane Meyer both, and Josh. Marv, are you on it, Marv? I don't know if we follow each other.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I'll
Yep.
have to shoot you a follow
I'll make
after
sure.
this.
Yes, for sure. Thanks.
But yeah, there's great Ethereum discussion in the Ethereum channels as well there. Yeah, I'm sure I'm missing some, but those are the big ones that come to mind.
Great. So you heard directly from Jason. Please look at all these forums. If you feel the need to get involved, it's an open invitation. Ethereum is built by the community for the community. So be plugged into what's happening, and you never know. There may be something for you to contribute here.
And if you're a developer, almost all of the repos are open source, and we would love like open contribution to all of those.
That's amazing. Do if people support Ethereum and build open source, do they get paid in ETH?
Depends who they're getting paid by. The EF absolutely pays people in crypto if they choose to be paid that way. I know that one awesome project that's also supported by the EF is Austin Griffith's Build Guild. And this is a really cool community where if you become part of it, you can basically take on these quests to build things, and then you get paid in ETH that's streamed out of this kind of common source of funding. And so there's lots of developers who contribute back into the ecosystem by helping to build and maintain the tools that are part of Build Guild that help developers, and then also getting paid in ETH to do it. So there's many different like grant programs, organizations, structures, entities, etc., that help support financially all the devs that work on Ethereum. And so, as is often the case, the answer is it depends. Protocol Guild, of course, is on that list as well.
No, that's amazing. And the reason I brought it up is because, again, me as an open source developer previously in my past life, I used to contribute to Mozilla. I never got paid, and I'm okay with that because I learned in experience. But if any developer is listening, there are other opportunities to like do it in part time. And instead of contributing to other open source products, you can contribute to Ethereum in many ways. And there is Gitcoin. You can make a proposal. There are retroactive funding as well. There are so many opportunities for you to spend your time. And again, it's not about just getting paid. It's more about like getting rewarded for your work, right? Like you're not gonna probably make as much as you make full time. uh, I think so, I'm assuming, but in most cases, like getting a reward, even a beer or a coffee out of the open source work that you did, it just feels appreciated. So that's the reason for the question.
Yeah, actually, a cool thing that reminds me of was there's an Ethereum app I came across the other day called Scout Game. And it's kind of similar to fantasy sports in the sense of you can like draft your players, but in this case, your players are actually open source Ethereum developers. And when you like buy one of these open source Ethereum developers, you also get like upside if they're like pushing a lot to their open source repos, but they also get some of that payment as well. And so it's like a win-win where if you're the people that you buy are contributing to open source, they're getting paid, and then you're getting paid for like choosing the right developers. And then another thing I want to add here too is if you're a developer, there's Ethereum hackathons and conferences almost every week. Maybe sometimes there's even multiple every week, so you have to choose one. But if you look up Nathan, I'm not exactly sure what his handle is. I should probably look this up, and I will later. But he has pinned as his tweet all of the his pinned tweet is all of the Ethereum events for the year. And they're offering like bounties at almost all of them if you're a developer. I remember when I was still a beginning developer, I won $3,000 at one of the hackathons, and for me that was just like the biggest sign of encouragement that all my work wasn't going to waste, and like the Ethereum community is willing to reward people even on the newer side. Because at the time I'm like I'm like not that good of a developer. I can't actually build a project that contributes, and like I was wrong. Like I was able to build like a cool project in just a weekend, and it felt really great to get paid for it too.
Absolutely, right? Like this, that's just amazing. And Josh just shared it. We'll probably share it in the notes as well, that particular feed. And I know ETH Global, whenever they host it, there are sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of hackathon prizes provided by not Ethereum Foundation themselves, but from the community builders and community products in the Ethereum ecosystem. That is, if you build on Ethereum and use their products, and then you get win-win. So there are lots of opportunities for you to explore and then get thank you money out of that. Uh, we are coming into last, like I would say, 20 minutes of the session, and I wanted to bring it back to like what major changes you want to see. I know Josh mentioned that make L2 L1 great again, L2s for the with the blobs, and L3, which is the sorry, not L3, the point three is UX. Um, if you had magical wand, uh, what problem you would want to like resolve like that? And is it the technical problem? Is it the community problem? Is it the finance problem? Uh, Tell me from your perspective. I would love to get that from you guys.
The first thing that comes to mind here is I wish people would, and me included, would keep like dreaming big. And one thing I'm loving right now is the energy around Farcaster and people like tinkering with like mini apps there, where it seems like every other day people are coming up with like these microtransaction apps or like GeoGuessr type apps. And I love seeing like new experimentation because I think we kind of have been a little bit stuck in our ways on the app layer. And I'd love to see us go back to like experimenting and dreaming big and trying out new apps. And so that's what I would say if I could change one thing.
Okay, if I can do a follow-up quickly, what's your favorite, or what are your three favorite apps on Farcaster? Because there are quite a few, and where else do you want to see it if, let's say, Farcaster doesn't exist? Because I think we want more pollination, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. The first one that comes to mind is what I was talking about earlier, where there's the microtransactions, the tipping. So there's both tipping, and then saw one came out yesterday, Noise.
Nice.
And I just love how powerful it is, where this could really only exist with not only just an open social network, but you also need permissionless money, where a like can send any amount of money that you choose. So I have it set as 2 cents, and every time I like a post on Farcaster, it automatically sends it out to that person. And I just think that's so powerful. So that would be my number one. Um, Number two, although I'm pretty bad at it, has been the GeoGuessr game. I think it's super fun that whenever it pops up, you can kind of guess the location. And then depending on how close you are, or not, no matter how close you are, you show up on the map and you see all your friends. I actually met the developer at FarCon, and I told him that I love your game, but I also hate it because whenever I see it on my feed, I always click it, and it's always at an inopportune time, and the connection sucks, and then I feel bad because I'm never really close to the location. But that's super fun. And then
No,
the third
sorry,
one,
he's also Canadian. So, like, our ex-Canadian. So, anyway, sorry. Please continue.
yeah. And my third one is going to be simple, but just paragraph. I love like seeing articles in my feed and then clicking it and not needing to like go to an entirely new application. You could actually read an article from within the feed, and I think that's a really great reading experience.
Gotcha. No, that's totally fair. Josh, again, the magic wand. I would love to hear your answer to that.
Yeah. Again, there are many problems, right? The whole crypto ecosystem and Ethereum really being the vanguard for that ecosystem has so much to do to reach our ambitions. But I guess I think about it as in maybe there's like three big buckets, right? Bucket number one is the strength and the utility of Ethereum as a platform, as a product, and here you want to make sure that it is performant, it is scalable, it is secure, it has hardness. You want to make sure the platform is really, really good. And I think there are problems, but we're doing okay. The system works. We're kind of continuing to fix those problems. There's a roadmap to fix them. We have a good track record of doing this. The second big bucket, I think, is the ecosystem of applications that exist today on Ethereum. And here also, could be better. Always, everything could be better. But we have an amazingly vibrant DeFi ecosystem. We have social ecosystems popping online, like Jason was just talking about. There's a real thing happening there. And then the third bucket maybe is what I would call growth or distribution, right? And I think maybe here is where I think crypto as a whole, but also Ethereum is weakest, right? Like we have things that work today, right? Like stable coins work. We know they have, fit to certain markets. We know that, people want them and that they can scale outwards. And I think a thing that we really need, if I could snap my fingers, would just be, distribution of the great stuff that exists on Ethereum already to the, hundreds of millions of people around the world that would use these things and would benefit from them if they knew about it or if it was easy for them to access. So I think that at this stage in Ethereum's history, one of the most important things is absolutely just going for that distribution and going for that growth. And I think we are turning our minds to that, right? I'm seeing more and more applications and L2s in our ecosystem understand that we have something that works now, and that we don't have to be in the mindset of this is just a prototype, which was the mindset of the Ethereum ecosystem for a very long time. It's here, it works today, let's take it to the world.
Josh, I'd actually like to follow up on that a little bit because I love what you say about the growth and distribution, because I think as a marketer, this is like my whole reason for doing this. So could you tell me, how are we, like, if we achieve this growth, what do we need to do to maintain the ethos at the very core of what Ethereum is? I'd like to get a little philosophical. Like, how do we maintain what makes Ethereum while ensuring that this reaches as many people as physically possible?
Yeah, it's a big topic. And I think you can break it down a little bit by, well, there's a couple things. One is that, I think that Ethereum growing and scaling and becoming something that matters for the world, it doesn't mean that every single person that ever touches Ethereum is going to get the whole philosophy, right? I think that the people that are very involved in the ecosystem that, help maintain the technology, that, decide where to build, it matters more for them to really understand the philosophy and the essence of it. But of course, there's going to be a lot of people, billions of people that just don't care and just want the thing that works. So I think that you need to think about a little bit in terms of, what matters there and why. But I don't think that that means that you're losing the ethos or the philosophy, right? I think ultimately, like, the philosophies or ideologies that scale to the world, they don't just scale because, you wrote an essay and someone reads it. They scale because the actual product, the technology itself, embodies those values, right? So one of Ethereum's values is censorship resistance. And if everybody on Earth gets access to censorship resistant money, even if they don't think about it in those terms, they don't know those words, they don't care about it day to day, if they can actually use those things, it might only matter a couple times in their life when they really need to be able to send money that is censorship resistance. But to me, that's Ethereum's values scaling, right? Like the technology embodies values, the technology has properties that have, moral value to them. And so bringing that to as many people as possible is, in my mind, scaling those values, at least in one way you might think about that. This is a very deep subject that we could probably talk about for another hour, but maybe that's my narrow answer to one piece of it.
Let me add on to that really quickly. One thing I heard that really hit home for me was when comparing Ethereum to something like email, where email is open, email is permissionless, email is censorship resistant. However, most people use like a hosted kind of service like Gmail or Hotmail or something. But just the ability to host your own server, even if 0.1% of people are doing it, keeps these platforms honest. Where Google isn't extracting money from you, Google isn't blocking you because they know you have that ability to exit back to the system that has all the properties that we want. So as long as we're keeping the properties on the base layer, the ones that we want, like censorship resistance, permissionless, credible neutrality, then even if users interact with like centralized products on top of that, those products won't be able to really take advantage of their users because they know they can always fall back and use Ethereum. And so I think that's a very powerful property that like Web2 platforms can offer and like more centralized blockchains can offer as well.
That makes quite sense. Before we end this and have like a final and one last question, but before that, one question regarding L2, and this is more like a selfish question because I'm also thinking about this quite a bit. Of course, I like Ethereum, but of course, I like other L2s as well because I think they are great. In the many of them follow the same ethos that Ethereum has built. How do you say, like personally, as an Ethereum Foundation, your role and for the lack of other ideas, let's say Optimism Foundation or Base as a foundation, their role, and how do you collaborate between them? Because one people would say that it's your basically they're eating away Ethereum's market, and I'm not talking about market share or prices by any share of imagination. I'm talking in terms of the usage, the requirement, and everything around that. And in one way, like in another places, those L2s cannot exist without an L1 like Ethereum. So how do you see the role and how do you balance that as the Ethereum Foundation itself?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think that obviously figuring out that relationship between the L1 and the L2s is top of mind for the ecosystem right now. I should say that it's not like the EF just gets to decide what that relationship is, right? I think that L2s are partners to L1, and I think you've seen the reaction to the EF starting to turn its mind more towards L1 scaling and more of the ecosystem turning its mind toward L1 scaling, all the client teams. The response from the L2s has been very positive. They know that their vision of the world only works if there is a strong performant L1 underneath them to secure and hold massive amounts of assets and be that anchor for the L2s. So I really see this as symbiotic. And the relationship is definitely not at its final form yet. We're still relatively early in this journey of what's the relationship between these two things. So, what the relationship should look like, it should look symbiotic. It should be a partnership. The EF does collaborate with these L2 teams, ranging from, kind of more strategic conversations to obviously lots of technical cooperation. Some of the interop work I mentioned earlier is very much, in coordination with all these L2 teams. So I think that there's a real kind of shared understanding of what the goal is and also a mutual awareness that, as an ecosystem, we're not there yet. But from what I see, at least, it all looks very positive. It looks like people understand what the vision is and are building towards it. And we just need to execute on that now.
That works for me. Jason, you want to add something or edit?
I think that was a fantastic answer. I guess one thing I'll just kind of plus one on is let's also recognize how early it is in the sense of I think everything moves so quickly in this ecosystem, we forget like where we are in time. And only a little over a year ago, fees on the L2s were at times like over $1. And now we're at a time when fees are less than $1. And that just opens up like a whole new realm of applications that previously were impossible. And I think that's like very, very powerful in the sense of the L1 can live with or can host applications that you need the absolute most security and beyond that, just too, like fees in the L1 is now less cheap too. But if you need like ultra cheap fees, then you could have the L2s and you can do microtransactions and we could kind of have the best of both worlds and like truly make Ethereum global and spread Ethereum to the world.
That's amazing. Interoperability wise, do you see interoperability between L1 and L2 being obfuscated in the UX? Is that a possibility and based on the current proposed solution, or am I daydreaming at this point in time?
No, you're absolutely not daydreaming. We're we're moving very quickly on this. And it's another thing that's also happening in the public. There are interop calls that Josh Rudolph, that Josh Sark previously mentioned earlier, that anybody can watch or contribute to. And we're making a lot of progress there. And then one thing that's like extremely exciting, but very like in the weeds technical is there was an announcement from Succinct the other day, I think, that they're now able to prove an Ethereum block in under 12 seconds. And
Yes.
what that means going forward is we'll able to have like 100% trustless interop between L2s. You won't even know what's happening behind the scenes, and it's going to be magical. But and that's another thing where like we kind of lose track of time. Where a couple of years ago that was thought to maybe be a decade away or
Yeah.
plus, and now it's almost here. So really exciting things are coming in the interop space.
That's amazing. I'm glad I'm not daydreaming. Plus, it reminds me of what Bill Gates said, right? Like, you always over project what you can do in 3 years and under project what you can do in 10. So this is one of them, right? So I really appreciate it. Look, I don't have any more questions. Mark, feel free if you want. Otherwise, I would love to get a closing remarks for Josh. Like, what can we as a community do for the Ethereum Foundation? Would love to do that and support not only, of course, like disclaimer, yes, I hold Ethereum in my portfolio, but as a builder, what do you want us to do more?
Yeah. Again, there's so many things, but maybe I'll just speak to, there's probably people on this call who are very new to all of this and are trying to figure out what they can do and how they can make a dent. I mean, my advice is just like reach out to people. This is a very friendly and welcoming ecosystem. Nobody is here because they went to Ethereum University and like we're on the right track to do it and all this stuff. Like everybody that's part of this came from somewhere else. Almost everybody that is part of this, often switched from some other career and just broke their way into it by joining a call or just writing some code or submitting a PR or publishing an article. So, reach out to people that you know of and you are excited about and you think you could work with. Just, do the thing you're thinking about and give back to the community and the community will welcome you. So don't be shy, jump in with both feet. There's a lot of people here who'd be very happy to have your help.
Great call out. Jason?
Yeah, one thing I'll just say is try out new products and really, we need to be the ones that are using the Ethereum applications, because if we want the rest of the world to use them and we're not ourselves, I don't think that's really a fair question to ask of them.
Yeah.
Now, if it is an application that is like very capital intensive, like don't like risk more than you're willing to use, like be safe with your money, make sure you're following like best safety practices. But we're also at the time when not all applications even involve like risking a lot of money. And like even some early things, if you want me to test out your new application, like please like reach out to me. I'd love to give it a demo and let you know my thoughts. And do the same for all your friends out there, because I think we need to support each other, especially if people are trying new things. Like one of the beautiful things about Ethereum is we're the place where like these crazy new experiments get tested out, and like maybe some things work and maybe they don't. But I think we need to run the experiments and try to support each other doing so.
Amazing call out. Now we'll keep building. As a builder, I can promise that, and as a tester, I'll keep trying for sure. Once again, thank you so much, guys, for building Ethereum Foundation, the ecosystem that you guys are building, the hard work they're putting in. You guys started when no one actually trusted that crypto can be done anything around that. For the viewers, we're about to end the show, but I just want to say what we are trying to do. Again, I don't do this often, but I'm going to keep repeating. Ethereum is turning 10. We are trying to celebrate it every day until its birthday. So roughly 10 weeks of Ethereum content every day, 1 p.m. EST.
Here's my birthday glasses for Ethereum. My noggles are ready.
Oh my God, I should do that. Okay, I'll do that tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, okay. I have now fun here. So again, please follow the channel. Please give Josh and Jason a follow. Give Mar everyone a follow and put the notification on, because we want to get you guys on the stories of amazing builders. And if you guys want to speak and if you think you have an amazing story to tell, just reach out publicly or privately. And I want to keep doing it. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Josh and Jason. And thanks for making it happen,
Thanks,
Mark.
Jimmy. Thanks, Marv.
Thanks so
everyone.
much.
Thank you guys. Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.